Good evening, all. Good evening, Anil sir. Good evening, Surya Prakash sir, Jolly sir, all BI members, and all my dear friends. It's a real pleasure to see you all back here after the long holidays. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And we have today one of the superstars of this industry, of our civil engineering industry, precisely saying a celebrity in the industry. I'm very, very honored to welcome you, sir. And on behalf of Bai Cochin and Construction Philosophy Magazine, I welcome all of you, the Bai members, Surya Prakash sir, Jolly sir, Anil Joseph sir, and everybody to this program. I would request Dr. Anil Joseph to come forward and give a brief introduction of our today's guest, Engineer Surya Prakash. Anil sir, please.
Yeah, good evening, Chairman of Builders Association of India Kochi Chapter, Jolly Varghese, the Speaker of the Day, Surya Prakash, and a good close friend, and Construction Philosophy, Nebu, the channel partner for the program, and my dear participants. It's been a pleasure to bring to you Surya Prakash, a very well-known, renowned engineer, and a person with so much of passion and so much of commitment for the growth of engineers and engineering fraternity in large. So it's a great pleasure to introduce him. More importantly, I feel that the work effort he is putting to bring the engineers bill in the parliament and to have the professional engineering system happening in the country is worth applauding. And for the youngsters, he is being a role model to how to work it out, and has made a network of engineers across the country to take it forward. And I wish all the best for his activities, and I am also a supporter to his all his activities. And it's my official duty to formally introduce him. Engineer P. Surya Prakash is an eminent engineer, consultant, and a mentor who has made significant contribution to civil engineering. Engineer Surya Prakash obtained his bachelor's degree in civil engineering from JNTUK Kakinada in 1986. He did his MS in structures in 1990 from IIT Madras. After working for 5 years as design engineer, in 1994 he established Satyavani Projects and Consultants Private Limited, a leading firm in across the country. He is also the founder and mentor of Smart Infrastructure, a trust dedicated to the civil engineering to enhance employability and employment. So I think he will give a brief of that or to our young engineers also today. Uh, he was president of ACCI from 2013 to 15 and is the founding president of PSI since 2013. Engineer Surya Prakash is a FIE, FSCC, and a member of Indian Concrete Institute. And he authored a book on design and implementation of communication towers and has done communication towers across the country. Engineer Surya Prakash was the guest training faculty to SERI, ESI, and Hyderabad on CAD of transmission line towers. He was chief resource person for LEAP lecture in 56 topics for smart infrastructure, covering the engineering fraternity, engineering students across the country. He was the organizing secretary for WISE 2004. He organized workshop on PepsCon 2013, 14, 15, A3C 2010, MECCON 2007, EI 2003, IS 456 New Vistas, seismic design of building, IS 1996, and the list goes on. He was a member of the expert committee for categorization of seismic damage structures. That's a very important aspect. The engineer Surya Prakash is involved in the successful conduct of several international conferences, where Como Italy, SCWC, Seoul, South Korea, IASS 2012, and Precast 2014 Moscow, and SCW Structural Engineers World Congress Cities in 2015 in Singapore. He guided projects for MTech and BTech students of engineering colleges, IIT Madras, JNTU, NIT Warangal, etc. And he was also involved in the training of engineers. Engineer Surya Prakash handled several prestigious projects during the past 3 decades. Some of the projects he undertook include affordable housing, buildings residential, commercial, office, IT industry, hospital, hotels, infrastructure, road, bridges, metro, runway, hangars. I don't know what is missing in the list. Stadiums, everything is there. Say an encyclopedia of practicing engineering is what Surya Prakash, whom I can simply put into. The prestigious client include Ministry of Defense, IA and FS, Tech Mahindra, GVK, GMR, BSNL, Idea, and again list goes on. And we are also one among them, an admirer of Surya Prakash, and looking to for this wonderful interaction with our beloved engineers of Kerala who wants to make a difference. And Kerala is a very literate state, and people here believe that the knowledge is something to be put into use. And I know that it will be a very wonderful session for our this thing. And I would like Jolie to put in a word before we hand it over to Surya Prakash for the session. Your few words, please.
So your mic is muted, Jolly sir. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, Surya Prakash sir, Anil sir, Nebu, and all the participants. First of all, I would like to extend all my thanks to Surya Prakash sir for spending your valuable time. I just read your biodata. It's a very, very long biodata and very well experienced. You have various exposures, just like design, construction of various structures, buildings, so roads, bridges, towers, and you have done wonderful works in and you are for civil engineering. You have done a lot of good works, and we really proud that you are our lecturer for this 12th series of quality improvement program. This we started just to improve the quality of our staff, both the practical and theoretical, and as a continuing education of technical and value addition to our engineers and staff. It was our main intention. And Dr. Anil was mainly the backbone behind this project. And for the last 11 sessions, we are able to bring many technocrats worked in the civil engineering construction fields. And we are very proud that our 12th session was presenting by the leading consultant and structural engineer from Hyderabad, Dr. Surya Prakash. Sir, we welcome on behalf of BI Coaching Center. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anil, Dr. Anil, for introducing me, and also Jolly sir for inviting me for this valuable time. So many participants from BII. Thank you all for taking out your time to share this knowledge, and Nebu doing great work in construction philosophy, actually. So welcome you all, and I would like to, without losing much of time, start the talk of the day, and that is very close to my heart, and very good to share our experiences. Primarily, any structural engineer, very civil engineer, we deal with buildings, we design the buildings. They are very close to our heart, and we want them to be healthy like us. And at the same time, many times we see buildings in distress, like people in distress. So my aim of my talk today is to analyze the causes and remedies with some of the case studies also. So with this brief background on the topic, I will move on to this. So the overview of my talk is...
Sir, excuse me. So give me a moment. Let me just mute all, and I'll ask you to unmute.
Yeah.
There's a disturbance. 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you can unmute yourself, sir.
Okay. Thank you. That will help me without being disturbed, actually. I'm very sensitive to any small noise, I get disturbed. Anyway, so overview of my talk today is introduction to the topic, and we briefly talk about what is distress and failures and accidents that happen because of the excessive distress, and the causes of these distresses in buildings, and remedies we talk about. So this is the brief overview of my talk. And so normally any building which is in distress tries to de-stress itself, means it will collapse. So that is the thing. And we all know why there is a distress in building. Any building that is designed as per the intent, as per the design basis, it will not have distress actually. We consider the loads as per the standards. We consider the planning as per the intent of the user and end user requirements. And we design the structure as per the structural, well laid out structural principles by analyzing for the stresses and analyzing for the loads and design for the stresses. And that is how buildings are healthy with the serviceability criteria being met and limit state of collapse being met. But in spite of all this, there are a lot of gaps like slip between cup and lip. Same thing happens in the design process and construction process also. So the primary cause for any distress in any of the buildings is mismatch between the design and construction intent and actual condition. There is we think something while designing, but in the actual condition, it will be different. So that is a mismatch basically that will cause the distress in buildings. So what are all the parameters where there can be this mismatch or loading first and foremost? We design for a residential building, people will use it for storage. Like that, there are so many mismatches and soil conditions. This is the biggest mismatch that can happen if there is no proper investigation or if there is no proper methodology for the soil, which I'll be sharing, which are all possible points as we move forward in the lecture. Accidents. This is another biggest cause. Accident means unforeseen condition, like fire, like blast, like floods. They're all accidents that can happen, which we don't foresee or which we don't factor in our design, except for certain criteria of providing cover and that kind of stuff. And the materials, again, mismatch in the materials. So the grade of concrete that we assume and the grade that is actually achieved in the construction. Construction methodologies and the structural system. That is the system that we have considered in the analysis and the system that evolved in the construction. Corrosion, which is the biggest thing actually, which can eat into the area of reinforcement that we design and the performance of the structure with reduced effective areas of the reinforcement. Another biggest thing is expected life. In fact, the buildings nowadays, recently I have given a talk on this design service life design of the buildings actually, which is the biggest challenge across the world today. It's very difficult to do an accurate predicted life for the structure. So this can also cause the distress in the buildings because we think that the building will survive minimum as per IS 456. Now we have 50 years design life period, but still it is very difficult to survive even 50 years because of this distress that we cause with the mismatches in the design and construction. So now let us go into each of this. When we talk about loads, we talk about dead load or self-weight or superimposed dead loads and live loads and wind and earthquake or seismic loads. So these are the loads which we have to define exactly what we intend to build for. And next is the soil. In the soil, the settlements, which are calculated based on the theoretical thing and testings that we do. But in the real condition, it is very difficult to predict the accurate settlements because of the soil structure interaction differences, and the soil itself is such a complex medium in which the prediction of settlements is not alone by the soil sample that we collect at the location or plate load test that we do for the location. It's a wide spectrum, and still there are a lot of gray areas in the soil. So Anil is a better person to comment on, but definitely it is the biggest challenge for engineers and buildings. Liquefaction, which is another biggest phenomenon during the earthquake for particularly silty sandy soils. When we design structures, we have to consider this phenomenon and provide for improvement, ground improvement. Expensive clays and caving in of the soils because of the formation of the strata and different strata. So these are all the various factors that can cause distress in the building. Accident, we have fire, blast, impact, and flood. These are the various accidents that can happen. So we have to keep in mind, particularly for this accident, we may not be able to design for serviceability criteria, but at least we have to design for the robustness. That means to prevent the collapse of the structure. Next is the material, poor quality of the material due to improper quality standards, wrong specification, and the shelf life, that is usage of the material. I have come across in many projects where the concrete which is used in the structural elements has already set, initial setting is done. And so when we do the testing, we realize your cube strength will be all right, but actually used concrete in the structural elements will not be according to the design specifications. So that is where shelf life comes into picture, particularly for cement and concrete and various chemicals that we might be using in construction. Next is the structural system. So it is an engineering error actually in analysis, modeling, support modeling, and element modeling. Also, I come across a lot of people misinterpreting the structural systems, and the load transfer mechanism also depends largely on the structural system. And the corrosion and life of structure, which we'll be dealing with examples, and the quality plan, quality assurance, quality control, quality audit, which is very essential. All these 4 stages for the materials, works, workmanship, and tolerances. These are very important. Most of the people I come across, they say, as a layman, the tolerance is okay, but we have to refer to the codes because they're all interconnected. The partial safety factors that we consider and the tolerance that is defined in the construction, whether it is the verticality of the column or eccentricity in the beam column junctions. So these are all some of the examples. Next is the construction. During construction, whether the method that we are adopting is an engineered method, engineered construction, or an unengineered construction like this. Here you can see the lot of bulging of the beams and packing of the walls with the bricks, clay bricks in place of cement block. And you can see missing sill blocks here, missing proper lintels. All this will cause a lot of distress in the buildings actually. And unplanned openings in the wall or structure, conduits, and all this will cause the stresses which are not considered in the design. And typical construction site, as we see, the detailing as per the drawing and actual construction, whether it is the reinforcement, whether it is the cover, whether it is the alignment of the column, whether it is alignment of the beams, all factors will also be contributing to the distress if they are not properly done following the relevant codal provisions or standards or practice. So we can see the concrete itself, which we feel is homogeneous and hard material. You can see if we just don't compact or vibrate the condition of the concrete, the whatever M50, M25, M30 grade, we design the mix, we make the concrete as per the design, but ultimately if it is not made, your cube strength will be giving very good, but in the actual condition of the site, this is how it is. And if you are not given opportunity to see this, if they render on the top before we inspect, we don't even know that concrete is not compacted properly, and it will be subjected to the stress and distress that is not undesigned stress. So we have to, we have made it a point, particularly for the concrete, to have core tests done at random, so as to ensure that the concrete that is designed and the concrete that is executed are of the same grade. So this is one of the biggest points. Next is the construction joints. This is a typical photograph I got in some of the sites. Can you say will you see any construction joint engineered here? So this is the biggest problem actually. These construction joints, if they are not treated or made properly, it will cause a lot of problems in the performance of the structure and in the serviceability of the structure also. Next biggest thing happening in our country now is the PT slab. Probably I've been using this PT post-tension slabs for last 20 years in buildings. But in post-tensioning, again, with the more technology, we are inviting more challenges actually. We are causing more distress in the building. So I'll be sharing some of the examples of challenges that we have in PT, post-tension slabs also. Next is the waterproofing. This is the biggest thing that happens in buildings, particularly residential, where, or even office for that matter, where we have the toilets, and if they are not treated properly for water barriers, and the detailing of this water barrier in conjunction with the sewer lines and the plumbing lines is also biggest challenge actually. So this can also cause over a period deterioration of the concrete quality which is designed and performance of the structure, and leading to higher distress. It starts with the dampness and then slowly corrosion and then distress in the structure. So this waterproofing, water barrier also is a very important element which I'll be sharing. Next is in the soils, basically, you can see here the difference in the founding levels, which mostly happens for the lift pits, which have to be deeper than the basement level. You can see there are different founding levels due to the soil condition at the site, but we have to consider the minimum distance between the footings, clear distance between the footings, and the difference in the level, which has to be 3D and 5D depending on the type of the soil. So this is very important aspect which happens during construction. Is the construction people take a decision to change the level considering the soil, but it has to be brought to the notice of the concerned design engineer and probably a geotechnical expert to take a decision on how it has to be treated when you have the different founding levels. Next is the mass concrete. This also causes a lot of issues, rafts particularly when you do the mass concreting without designing for the heat of hydration. The initial concrete itself can have the cracks internally, which can also lead to the additional stresses and distress in the foundation itself. Excavation, deep excavation, which is very common nowadays, without considering the adjoining structures, can also lead to catastrophe or distress in the buildings. So instead of going for retrofit or rehabilitation or repair kind of stuff, it is better to have proper methodology, proper approach to handling these deep excavations by shoring and strutting, by active anchors or passive anchors kind of systems, or touch piles or shoring piles or sheet piles. So this is very important. We have to plan before itself, considering the excavations, adjoining structures, and we have to draft the design basis considering the type of soil and the depth of excavation and adjoining structures. So this is the important aspect. So I'm just covering various aspects of this distress. Collapse during construction, which is again quite common, which happens in most of the buildings because of lack of construction engineering. So one has to plan the shuttering and centering and support system for any concreting works, considering the loads during construction and the stages of construction. We have come across many through news, many during construction and loss of life is very pathetic thing that happens. We have seen recently means about 3-4 years back in Chennai, 68 people dying in one just collapse. And every day we see come across in the news, most of the accidents are not reported also, managed through media. So we as engineers and builders and developers and consultants, we have to take care of the construction engineering aspect while designing the construction sequence. And probably for more complex constructions, it is worthwhile making the construction drawings, every stage of construction, and estimating the construction loads and the behavior and designing for it. Otherwise, it is like a stillborn baby. The building gets distressed only during construction, even before it's being born. So it's very important aspect we have to all consider. So now let us look at some of the case studies that I have come across, at least, just to stress on the importance of proper engineering, proper quality control, and proper management of the built environment. So no soil test, no material test, no construction engineering. And I'll not read all this stuff, but with photographs, this is a accident happened in Hyderabad, again during construction itself, but it was a progressive collapse. One slab collapsed and subsequently 2-3 slabs, and people died, 2-3 people died during construction of such small building itself. And many people got trapped, and then they had to be removed. And this is another accident in Karnataka, Ballari, I think. Yeah, Ballari. And here also you can see during construction itself, due to bad material, bad engineering, or no engineering. So the building has collapsed, and thorough investigation was done, and the people responsible were taken to task. Next is the dilapidated heritage old buildings. You know, this is probably more than 100 years old building in Hyderabad. This is the condition of the building, and if this has to be saved, it is a very real challenge for the engineers restoring this kind of buildings, where this was a lime concrete, and lime concrete has to be restored. And you can see a lot of vegetation and erosion in the soil underneath the structure itself, and the ground levels varying. So all this has to be considered while assessing the life of the structure or certifying for further life of the structure, residual life of the structure. So here also you can see below the foundation, the soil has got extensive roots and trees grown, and it will also cause the distress in the building. This is the weathering aspect of the even jack arch roofs. It has served very good life already, more than 100 years, but still we have to consider, if we have to extend the life of this kind of structures, thorough investigation and proper method of restoration have to be adopted. Next is the earthquake. As introduced, I had the opportunity to visit Gujarat, Ahmedabad post-earthquake. Very unfortunate, but a big eye-opener. In fact, this is when I thought a strong need for engineering reforms. In fact, I was part of a committee constituted by the government of Gujarat then, and I had the opportunity to work with Professor A.S. Arya. And so we have in our report, one is we have prepared the guidelines for damage assessment of the structures post-earthquake, and which kind of structure can be restored and which kind of structure has to be dismantled. Like that, we have prepared the guidelines, which has become part of the code, I was told later. And but we have also given the recommendation to the government to value presence of good engineering practices. This is very, very important thing, because most of the structures that were in Gujarat were not designed for earthquake itself. That is the saddest part of it. So they will be subjected to distress because of the earthquake for which it is not designed. And then periodic training of all categories of engineers. What are the categories of engineers? We suggested actually that a geotechnical engineer has to be on board of every project, and there will be a structural engineer and there will be a civil supervising engineer. These three categories are minimum actually, and for more larger projects or larger spans or tall building, there should be a peer reviewing engineer also. So there are 4 categories that we have suggested, and minimum fee structures for professional engineers. This is also one of the biggest challenges that our industry is facing, because engineers are not, if they are not paid, you will not get the, so there is a saying, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. So same thing is happening in civil engineering and structural engineering. So we have to have recognition and categorization of engineers. This I have drafted in 2001. I'm just sharing the same report. So still it is a dream to be realized for me, for all of us engineers. So we all have to work for it anyway. So geotechnical engineers, structural engineers, construction engineers or supervising engineers, and then we have these proof consultants or peer review consultants. So these are all the 4 categories which have to be the part of the design team or project team actually, who should be professional engineers. They should have the accountability, they should have the responsibility, and they should also be recognized by the government in these categories. This is what we are all fighting all over India now. So the first cause of damage is lack of good engineering practices, resulting in poor quality of materials, bad workmanship, lack of good construction practices. The second cause is the ill-formed structural systems such as irregular grids, stub columns or floating columns, large cantilevers, and unsymmetrical and non-uniform pattern. So now you can see the latest code 16700 and IS 1893 recommendations about symmetry and all that have evolved from these observations during post-Gujarat earthquake. Next is the lack of proper design approach. Many buildings are not even designed for earthquake, as I said. The ductility provisions to be followed, earthquake-prone areas are not followed, and even the standards are not complied with the detailing or provision of reinforcement. So these are all everything is missing. Multi-story buildings are constructed exceeding the design number of floors or additional head loads even, like water tanks and all that. The buildings with good framing pattern with columns at regular intervals, every engineered building has performed well. 90% of the engineered buildings have survived the earthquake without much of damage. So basic requirement is engineering. So the buildings that are near square shaped in plan without stilt floor or open parking have performed very well. These are all the observations. So shall enforce professional engineers bill. This was our recommendation in 2001. 4 categories of engineers and occupancy certificate and periodic. Please remember, all the buildings have to be qualified for seismic loads every 5 years. This is another recommendation we made, and it is part of the National Building Code also. So we all have to insist on, when we certify any structural stability for the building, we have to qualify saying that this certificate is valid for 5 years and it has to be renewed every 5 years. So that is because codes are changing, and every revision in the code, the building that we have certified has to be retrofitted. So we all have to work for it. Next is all buildings must be designed and detailed 13920 earthquake prone areas, necessarily analyzing, considering 3D modeling and dynamic quasi-static methods. The complex shapes in plan shall be avoided as much as possible, the stiffness and mass. So these are all the recommendations. Stilt floor, sudden change. So these are some of the photographs that I have taken post earthquake. You can see column just with 4 reinforcement bars and ties see the spacing, 9 inches, 10 inches kind of spacing, which is very dangerous. And so this is the condition. They have temporarily propped with the structural elements here. And this is another building. You can see the 4.5-inch walls in the 5-story building, which is leaning. We had to give a recommendation for demolition without affecting the adjoining building. And this is, you can see people started retrofitting or repairing cosmetic treatment, I call it, without proper design again. Again, we are doing the mistake second time. So this is the distressed buildings I call. So you can see here also, most of the damages are near the beams, floor beams, and above the floor actually. So the maximum shear occurs here. That's why we have ductile detailing at the junction of the beam and columns actually. So here also, this is another case of column where it has cracked. So these are all the distressed elements. Next is the wind. So earthquake, we have seen some examples, and wind, these are some of the towers which I have inspected post-collapse. Maybe I would have done 50, 60 collapses, forensic audits for the failures. Here you can see the foundation concrete also has flown with the tower. So this kind of distress because of the lack of proper anchorage. So when we talk about the wind, the shear and the anchorage are very important, and the tension for which we have to design. So these are the foundation pedestals you can see without proper anchorage to the base structure. And this is another mast actually, which has collapsed. And so many examples. Here you can see the net area calculation. That is very important in case of tension members. We have the formula net area in which we have to consider the number of bolts. But here you can see during construction, they have put more bolt holes in the same cross section, because of which the whole structure has failed. So it's very important detailing in steel structures, particularly for wind conditions. And base plate, the check nut. In fact, we insist on nut and check nut. Check nut is the second one, which should prevent, and these are the leveling nuts below the plate. So this is very important because if we see these distressed structures, we'll understand the importance of this detailing and various provisions in the codes that are given. Next is the settlement. So this is the settlement and due to the expansive clays actually in one of the projects that we have observed, even 3 inches kind of separation in the masonry walls. So you can see here, this is due to the soil settlement. So distress in the structure due to the soil settlement. And we marked these things to observe the further progress of the cracks during the settlements, and we had to give external solution for this kind of projects. You can see the building. It's just G+1 building, but still there are so many cracks and distress in the buildings here also. Next is the fire. So fire is a very common thing that happens in most of the projects, particularly with electrical installations and all. And here you can see, this is a IT building with the post-tension slabs. In fact, till I analyzed this fire accident, I used to think PT is bad in post-tensioning is bad against fire. But after observing this, in fact, PT saved the structure because the PT strands will have the more cover, and during the fire, though the whole reinforcement got exposed, the slab was intact. So the post-tensioning has saved this, and we have restored this slab. Even drop panels, you can see the reinforcement is exposed in the flat slab drop panels. So this is we observed the levels of the slab and cracks in the slab, and we recorded, and we found that structure is safe and intact, and we immediately repropped and restored this structure. And it's almost more than 10 years. It's performing well even now after the rehabilitation. Steel structures in fire. Again, this is the biggest thing we all have to consider. Here, the structure has collapsed because steel structures, if we don't treat for fire rating, whether it is what is that, insulation, or whether it is intimason paint that will create the insulation when it is subjected to fire. It's very important for steel structures. Otherwise, steel structures are very disastrous against fire and corrosion, of course. So we have to, as engineers, take precaution to advise and draft in the design basis the fire rating. 2-hour fire rating minimum is very important for any structure, because that is the time required for evacuation during the fire accidents. So these are some of the photographs, and you can see how the steel members are twisted. Next is the blast. even a small house with a gas cylinder blast, you can see the kind of distress that it can cause and loss of life. So we have to have basic detailing provisions to prevent structural collapse due to blast. People may not die because of the blast, but people will die because of the collapse subsequent to the blast. So we have to give the robustness to the structure against blast, particularly in tall buildings and all. So this was one of the blast accidents that happened. Next is the structural system case study. So we come across many times the flat slabs, flat plate difference and flat slab, and drop panels being missed or column heads being missed, and the shear failure it may cause, or the distress or excessive deflection that it can cause in the flat plates. So we have to retrofit such things, or we have to properly design the elements with the proper structural system. So this is another interesting example I have come across, the silo. In any design of the silo, we all know that the most important thing for considering the load or stress in the silo shell is the friction coefficient. And here the designer, you can see, very excellently considered the GI sheet, but he has put the GI sheet horizontally, corrugation. So because of which the friction coefficient has multiplied manifold, and then the whole silo has failed because of the excessive loading. This is because of the mismatch between the structural system design and the structural system actually executed. So this kind of examples will give us importance of such minute things where we have to meticulously follow, starting from design intent, design basis, design calculations, and construction engineering and construction practices. So this is, next is the structural system model, behavior, and detailing. So I have come across recently one of the buildings where the structural engineer has assumed some structural system. The cantilever, which was to be considered, was not considered. He considered the cantilever as a secondary beam and design. Means he failed to take the results, plot the bending moment and shear force diagram. That is very important for the designers, basically. And so this is the result of such, so you can see the grid of beams, and there are failures, and we have done the study and gave a report saying that there is a big mismatch between the actual structure that is existing system and the system that is considered in the detailing and design. Quite different. It was erroneously done, and structure has is subjected to a lot of distress because of that mismatch. So study of bending moment diagrams is very important for such any buildings. Actually, we are going out, at least you study the stresses. Otherwise, you plot the stresses and see whether we are designing for those stresses or not. So corrosion, next, very important. I have come across a good example of a factory here. There is a steel structure. That means the steel structure not being painted with proper, here you can, as you see, they have just painted red oxide and left it. And see the exposure condition and the extent of corrosion that is there in the steel structure and concrete. See, the structure was about to. So we have inspected. So fire, corrosion, we have to give proper specification for protection against fire and corrosion for steel structures, as well as concrete, of course. I have given you both examples of concrete and steel. In concrete, fire and corrosion in concrete, and fire and corrosion in steel. Now corrosion, this is the kind of fumes that are there in the factory, and for which the design intent did not specify the proper treatment for the structural steel members. And this is the concrete structure. We all talk about exposure condition in IS 456, mild, normal, severe, extreme kind of exposure conditions for concrete. Here it is a good example, classic example of inadequate cover for the reinforcement. So because of which now you can see the entire reinforcement pattern in the structure, all columns, beams, and slab even. So this is the corrosion example of concrete structures. So you can imagine the level of distress that this corrosion can cause to the structure. This is the column. You can see the ties and main bars in the column with the corrosion. Next is the deep excavation, very, very important. So nowadays we are doing deep, in fact, I would have done 20 meters, 25 meters kind of deep basements in the last 15, 20 years, many projects actually. So we have to study the soil profile, soil strata, water table conditions, and hydrostatic pressure. All these things we have to consider and design. And if we don't design properly, again, this can cause a lot of distress. So here you can see the shoring piles with a capping beam. And before even excavation proceeded, we keep doing the gunneting or shotcreting with the mesh of reinforcement and the piles. And here, design brief, I would like to say that I take a lot of, micro detailing, and we have to insist on certain design brief. That means the method of deep excavation shoring protection, actually. There are so many methods of shoring protection. And as engineers, we have to specify the right one, which is reliable, which is safe. And if anybody takes deviation, if we specify right, and if some contractors take deviation, and if anything happens, at least as a structural engineer, you are protected. But it is very, very challenging, I would say. We have come across this kind of collapses in the deep excavation. Next is the plinth beam, grade beam, and brickwork above plinth beam, brickwork below plinth beam. All these things we have to detail very carefully, considering the water table levels and flooding conditions. And also the reptile or rat protection. All this is very important in the detailing. So these also, bandicutes, which can excavate through concrete or brickwork even, and cause a lot of collapses in the structure or soil settlements. Curing, next, during construction is very important. Curing precautions with the proper curing methodology, whether it is curing compound or water curing, and steam curing in case of cold weathers, or in precast conditions, accelerated curing. All this we have to specify properly and follow the methodology as per the design. Next is even the plaster and masonry works. We have seen many failures because of lack of design. Many people think that masonry is mason's job. No, actually masonry is also engineer's job. We have to do proper design for masonry. There are codes for masonry. There are codes for design structural masonry. Every structure, every element that weighs more than 500 kgs, let us say, is a structure actually. We have to design for the wind load, self-weight, and any eventual loadings. And we have to detail proper construction method and the proper execution method. Method statements we have to prepare for masonry and plaster even. And next is the waterproofing. Many people, waterproofing itself is not a correct terminology in my opinion, but still the structure that we are designing, we are giving the cover, assuming that normal exposure condition or moderate exposure condition. But if we don't provide these water barriers for the structure, there is a mismatch between the design intent and design method, design basis actually. So we have to have waterproofing barrier below the foundation and around every every water, dampness, exposure of dampness, like underground sumps, swimming pools, and septic tanks or sumps or these collection tanks. So roof is another thing, weatherproofing of the roof. So all are, and driveways. So we should have the total and lawns landscaping. So you can see we have to detail the waterproofing barrier, which also can cause otherwise distress in the buildings. And this is the detailing for landscape. We have to provide the drainage, geofabric layers, sheet drains and membranes and all that. So we have to be very cautious. And this is the weatherproofing and waterproofing in the roof terrace. 2 layers of waterproofing. You can see the level of detailing that we do. So these are all very important aspects. And toilets, detailing of the WC's P-trap or S-trap and the non-E traps and all that, the detailing has to be proper. And this is the sunken slabs or swimming pool areas where again we have to have the 2 layers of the water barrier. And this is the protection against for the waterproofing layer membrane. Protection for the waterproofing membrane is also very important. Here you can see the bubble sheet that we provided for the waterproofing membrane. So waterproofing below footings, poor water pressure drainage, overestimated SBC due to improper investigation, foundation from undisturbed base, and plinth beam, grade beam, plinth wall, DPC, plinth protection, drainage surrounding the building. So this brickwork has become non-engineered mason work. So we have to follow these codes, IS 2212, 1991 and IS 1905 for stability of the masonry. So let's not forget, we have to design the masonry. Length to thickness ratio, height to thickness ratio for the masonry, they're all specified in the code and they're all based on the, nowadays we are using so many types of bricks and blocks, aerated concrete, cellular lightweight concrete, clay bricks, cement blocks and lightweight bricks and all that. So for each of them, these factors will change. So we have to be very cautious and design the masonry as per the codal provisions. And PT slab counter propping without pore strip concreting. So this is the very important thing, counter props being removed during construction that has caused a big cracking here. You can see this is the pore strip and this is the cracking happened near the supports. So please, so we have to jack up that slab and we have to restore the structure. So weatherproofing, temperature reinforcement, if you don't want to provide weatherproofing, that means insulation in the terrace, at least provide the temperature steel. That means you provide the 2 layers of reinforcement in the terrace slab and slope in structural slab and downtake pipe detail and size of the downtake with proper design, considering the obstructions that can be caused in the terrace, and camber in large spans and waterproofing details. So these are all the things we have to take. And flat slabs, direct design method and equivalent frame method, you have the limitation. Many times they'll be missed. So we have to be very careful, and punching shear provisions, deflection check in large span, long-term deflection particularly, considering the shrinkage and creep and long cracked section and inelastic section. So these are all the things, particularly when we do limit state of serviceability checks. And a column strip, middle strip, and openings in the flat slab. Lap provisions, honeycombs in the concrete lumping due to initial setting happening before usage of the concrete, and ties in the columns and starters in the columns. The starters are the biggest cause of distress, and beam junctions. So these are the various distresses in the beams and slab due to bad detailing. So this I have shown. And this is in one of the basements, we had hydrostatic pressure, and the whole basement 2 floors got lifted in the podium level actually, just because the client has plugged the pressure relief wells actually. Then we had to provide separate bores and give the pressure relief like this. This is after retrofitting is done. So water pressure is relieved and the structure got performed well. So distress can be caused by hydrostatic pressure and very honeycomb and bad concrete. I mean, we should not even look at this kind of pictures, but that's what is reality is happening. Shrinkage due to water cement ratio, long-term deflection checks not being done, wrong detailing, SP34 to be followed, support condition modeling, delayed concrete, particularly when we use ready-mix concrete, poor sequence of concrete, and bad joints. These are all the causes of things, and we have to eliminate. Lack of construction engineering, missing counter propping, inadequate cover, slabs, corner reinforcement, and the lack of chairs or inadequate chairs, foundation settlement, and engineering. foundation engineering. Expansive soils, backfill compaction, layers soil properties to be considered, and inadequate or no geotechnical investigation, expansion joint treatment, reinforcement congestion in detailing, and construction sequence time, and satisfying design assumption, buttress retaining wall versus backfill condition of the stem wall. Deep excavation storing design brief. I'm just wrapping up. And construction loads, material dumping during construction, and curing period and periodicity of cubes, and excess cement in the design mix, and spacing of the rebars, inadequate centering and bracing. Construction joint treatment, waterproofing, weatherproofing, embedded pipes, clusters, chasing of structures. We see columns being cut horizontally for the sake of providing pipes, which is very dangerous. Flooding in the vicinity, groundwater table variations, and 2D, 3D of the footing founding levels, distance between the footings, clear distance between the footings and the difference in the levels of the footing. Plumbing and drainage, terrace slab sloping, dimension tolerance of the slabs, beams and columns, topo survey and setting data on adjoining buildings. So remedies are investigate, core test, profometer, levels record, pour card, concrete time cards, masonry wall detailing, cement consumption, chemical consumption, grouting, shear stitching, jacketing, corrosion treatment, injection, jacking, strengthening, infill stiffening. These are all the remedies. Micropiling, underpinning, external soil treatment and soil anchors, vibration sensors, damping, building monitoring, and engineered investigation, design, supervision, quality assurance, quality control, and quality audit. And finally, prevention is better than cure. So to avoid distress in the buildings, we have to train engineers, motivate engineers to be engineers, and enlighten stakeholders to engage engineers. And nurtured engineering gets better engineers. This is my slogan, actually. And the buildings get distressed without building engineers or building engineers. And no cause or remedies for the project with good engineers. So let us all educate people to engage with engineers for better engineered buildings. So thank you very much. And I look forward to any questions, or you can mail to me or through Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm there. And you can connect to me and ask me questions now or later. So I thank Anil Joseph Doctor and Nebo Abraham and Joy. So for giving me this opportunity, Builders Association of India, and look forward to more interactions with you there.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for this wonderful section. Now let us move on to the question and answer session. Dear friends, we have one of the very renowned civil engineers in this country. So please don't miss this opportunity to learn. I request everybody to enable your videos and try to use this opportunity to interact with Engineer Surya Prakash. So let us start the interactions. Anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. This is your platform now.
You can unmute and ask question, participants. I have one doubt. You were talking about that firefighting cases, and you pointed out that pre-stressing saved the building.
Post-tension.
So can you just elaborate? Post-stressing has saved the building. So can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, the photograph that I have shown is the bottom reinforcement completely got exposed due to inadequate cover.
Okay.
But still the slab, it was a large span slab of 10 meters, but still slab survived because of the post-tensioning ducts. We do the grouting of the post-tension sheets, and So it had enough cover and it got survived because of the cover. And slab we could restore to its original position in spite of entire reinforcement being exposed actually. It didn't collapse. That is how I said post-tensioning helped in the fire accident.
Understood. Jolie, you can unmute.
Sir, a podium structure was lifted due to water pressure.
Yeah.
See, what is the reason for that? The uplift of that building.
We had
Remedies.
Yeah, we had two tall buildings with a podium actually. Podium having two basements, and we have considered the hydrostatic pressure and provided the relief valves near the structure. So structure was performing well for 10 years. Due to some reason, the developer has plugged those relief valves without our knowledge. So due to the hydrostatic pressure, 2 floors of podium, because we have 2 towers, they are acting as support. And this got lifted like an arch action. And then we had to restore it back by relieving the pressure, hydrostatic pressure, by providing the relief valves again. And now it's already 5 years since we have given the restoration, and it is working well. And
it's a permanent fixture. So it's a permanent.
Now we have given a permanent system. Nobody can plug these valves.
Pressure lifting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody from the audience? Any questions?
Good evening, sir. This is Amjad.
Hi.
Go ahead, Amjad.
Sir, I have a small doubt. That is, one of my friend has got a house which has got cracks similar to the cracks which you have shown during the, in the settlement crack.
Oh,
so his house is near to paddy field, and can you just suggest us a general practice for how to prevent or remedies for that settlement crack?
In fact, for such expensive clays, I always go for external treatment. That means the expensive clays, Anil has to ratify my statement. I already discussed with many soil experts, and they said, yeah, my thinking is right, because the swelling pressure is proportional to the mass of the soil actually. The pressure that expensive clays exert on the structure. So we have to break the mass. So what I suggest for such small building is you can cut a trench around the building beyond the depth of the foundation, and then backfill with the granular material so that the drainage, it will mainly the swelling is due to the moisture condition. So we have to see that our foundation rests on the non-varying moisture conditions. So we have to provide the cutting trench, which I have done in many projects. It is working well. It is better than going for under-reamed piles actually, breaking the mass of the soil. I hope Anil will agree with me.
Yeah, it's a very good suggestion which can practically used also.
In fact, the example that I have shown, we have adopted. It is actually colony of 2,000 buildings.
Okay.
Every year, 5 buildings are failing.
Okay.
So I said, I can't keep repairing every building. Instead, I have given a drainage system after studying the topography of that area. And after doing that, it is working well.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Yes, Sita.
I'm Taram Prasad from Hyderabad. Sir, I have a small doubt, sir. Sir, can we use stone columns in foundations of buildings, sir?
Yeah, I have used actually in one project in Hyderabad only, where we had a old well, deep well. We were trying to excavate beyond 5 meters. We found that it is unviable. So we found that there is a lot of silt in the backfield well. And we have driven the stone columns of at least 8 feet to 10 feet depth. And we have made a raft resting on the stone columns and it worked well. It's already more than 25 years old structure. It performs well. And
Sir,
it has
I
to be
have,
designed. It has to be designed. Don't go for without design, just stone columns. Okay.
sir, I have another a small continuation of this doubt, sir.
Hmm.
Sir, can we use the stone columns in the seismic regions, sir?
Yeah, why not? Anil, can you confirm?
Yeah, we can because generally primarily liquefaction happens where the N value is in the range of 2 to 4 in the region. So
Yeah.
the point which you have to notice that for the lateral loading, you might need reinforcement. So that is one aspect that we have to take care of for the tension. Otherwise, what will happen if we can improve the N value to higher values, like having a stone column, because that is something which is now mooted in the discussion of our Ram temple also, which is happening. Where I
Yeah.
don't, since the trust doesn't want to have any steel in place, they are trying for a ground improvement using stone column systems, using vibroflotation to improve the ground so that it won't be susceptible to liquefaction. But now the problem is there is a river running below that. So the panel has been made across the country now to study with IIT professors across to come up with a solution to this particular problem, which is under discussion. I think Surya Prakash can give more enlightenment to this particular aspect which is happening now.
Yeah, if we study that topography and all, probably we can come up with out-of-box solutions for such things.
Yeah. And for Sitaram, there is one more thing. Now there is something called encased stone column, wherein they use these geotextile elements to take care of the lateral forces to take care of the stone column, because stone column is a good in compression, but it is weak in tension and it is likely to bulge. Now
Correct.
this concept of encased stone column, IIT Madras is doing a lot of work in that, where they are coming up with this encased stone column concept to take care of the lateral loading. So that's also a solution to the problem.
That's right.
Sir, I have another doubt, sir. Sir, what are the precautions and what are the considerations which we take when we build a house or a structure or a bridge in a backwater area, sir? Like dedicated freight corridor from Bombay to Vaitarana.
Okay.
Sir, what are the precautions which we take and how it is planned and how it is done, sir?
It's a very big question, Sitaram. Actually, we have to use the sheet piles for such areas, actually. And it is a combination of loading design and the ground condition and the water table levels. As you said, it is a backwater area, and salinity. When you talk about backwater, it is a salinity also. So a multitude of issues we have to design properly. We cannot solve this issue in a meeting like this.
Okay, sir. Sir, thanks for resolving my doubts, sir. Thank you so much.
Good, good.
Thank you, Sitaram. Anybody else?
So I think we are going beyond the time, and anybody having any questions anytime, you can write to me or CP, Construction Philosophy. We'll be happy to resolve any of your doubts.
All right. Thank you, Surya Prakash sir. Shall we wind it up? Call it a day?
Yeah, we can. I think, Jolie, can you do the vote of thanks, Chairman? And for my part, I would like to thank you in person for this wonderful session, which I know can be a big eye opener for our younger generation. And we need more of your interaction in these sessions. And I would like our chairman to officially put the vote of thanks. And thank you, Surya Prakash, for being there, and Nebu and all the participants for being here for this meeting.
Thank you.
Jolie, sir.
I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to Engineer Surya Prakash. Sir, you have explained very well, and we are very thank you for sharing your exposure and experience with our students and young aspirants. I think the time was short. Because you have gone through a various type of defects and distresses and rehabilitation and many subjects. So the time was a constraint. I hope in the future we will have another section with a long the more time and this subject.
Yeah.
On behalf of BI Cochin Center, we are always in the forerunner for training our staff and quality improving and engineering aspects. And we are giving classes for engineering college students. And we are again tie up with many engineering colleges, especially Cochin University of Science and Technology. And Dr. Anil Joseph was leading all these projects. And I hope we can share your experiences in the future also. I once again thank you so much for sharing your valuable experiences and time with us. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening and a good day. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye, everyone. See you. Thank you.